afternoon, Commissioners. Welcome to the 2011 Budget Address. On July 13th of 2009, I stood right here and delivered a pretty grim budget message to you and the residents of the city. And at the time, our country was plunging into the worst recession since the Great Depression. Here in Orlando, the financial crisis rocked our revenues, leaving us with a $40 million budget deficit. Worse still, the economic downturn meant that the city would see increasingly larger deficits in the years ahead. Orlando's financial future faced an unprecedented challenge. And on that day, we talked about choices: raising taxes, laying off police officers and firefighters, cutting everything to the bone. Little technical difficulty. Is it feedback from somewhere? Still. Money for upgrading.
Sound system.
Like it's 1960.
What?
It's doing that like 1960. It's doing it black and white this.
Yeah. Let's take a short recess till, let's give them 10 minutes, so 20 after. Do we have sound? They just turned it off.
finding solutions, and I know they're going to work.
Okay. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Well, apparently our sound system has a little deficit, but the good news is the city doesn't have one. Let's go back to July 13th, 2009. We talked about raising taxes. We talked about laying off police officers and firefighters, cutting everything to the bone, taking a short-term approach and trying to put those decisions off till later. And all of those options were on the table. And those options would have been easy fixes to get our budget back online or just delay the inevitable. But rather than taking the easy road, this government, this commission, chose another path. And for more than 2 years now, we've rolled up our sleeves every day to make the difficult but necessary decisions that have reduced the size of our government and allowed us to live within our means. We eliminated more than 400 positions. We reduced or eliminated services. We dramatically reduced the size of government, with the only new spending going toward police and fire. Our employees stepped up and voluntarily relinquished their cost of living increases. We challenged our departments to do more with less. We continued, though, to fully fund our pension obligations. We made a commitment to delivering balanced budgets without raising taxes, and we kept our reserves, our safety net, intact. We are one of the very few Florida governments who has not raided its reserves during this recession. We made tough, responsible choices to reduce the size of our government while maintaining our investments in important areas like police, fire, public works, and our downtown core. This careful planning has kept Orlando on firm financial footing through the days of the recession and into the early period of recovery, and it has enabled us to position ourselves for the future. Because of this hard work, Commissioners, our residents can proudly say that right now Orlando is in the best financial shape of any major city in Florida. Let me say that again. Orlando is in the best financial shape of any major city in Florida. Look at how we compare. Orlando has the lowest tax rate of any major city in Florida. Orlando has a lower tax rate now than it did 20 years ago. Orlando has fought tax increases while other cities have raised their tax rates in response to the negative effects of the recession. Orlando has balanced its budget without the need to drain its reserves. In fact, since 2005, Orlando has added to its savings by 30%, while other local governments have drained their strategic reserves. Orlando has more police officers per 1,000 residents than any other major city in Florida, and at the same time, we have steadily reduced the number of overall employees. Orlando is the only major city government in Florida to have funded all its committed retirement benefits. And Fitch Ratings gave Orlando a AAA bond rating in 2011, the highest credit score possible. And in the midst of this effort to reduce cost, we've been able to maintain our strategic investments in police and fire protection, critical infrastructure projects such as streets and sidewalks, new fire stations and police substations, critical upgrades to our storm and wastewater systems, as well as our efforts continue the revitalization of our downtown. Commissioners, we are in this position because of your hard work during challenging times. And I want to thank each one of you for your partnership and commitment to fiscal responsibility. Today, I am proud to be with you as we share the message with our community that we do not face a budget deficit this year. Accordingly, the budget we are proposing today requires no additional cuts or reductions in services. But more importantly, this budget once again includes no tax increases or no increases to our tax rate. We are once again holding the line on taxes and keeping money in the pockets of our residents when they need it most. In a few minutes, Rebecca and Ray will present an overview of the proposed budget and highlight some of our planned expenditures for the fiscal year ahead. You will pretty quickly realize that this is a basics budget, one that allows our city to continue to perform the functions of the government that people depend on every day at the highest levels possible, protecting our residents and visitors, preventing crime and responding to emergencies, maintaining our roads, parks, and sidewalks, picking up the trash, providing the infrastructure necessary for people to go about their lives, stormwater, wastewater, and other health and safety functions. I remarked last year that spending money to provide these functions is not glamorous. There won't be a whole bunch of headlines about the money we invest in the sidewalk rehabilitation program or making sure that the trash is picked up twice a week. But providing these core services at the highest level possible is our mission, and that's precisely what this budget accomplishes. This budget also provides funding to continue what I believe is our city's greatest success story in the midst of this recession, a commitment to police and fire protection that has helped to produce the most dramatic drop in crime in city history, and has helped our fire department remain among America's best departments. Since 2007, violent crime has been cut by more than 40% in Orlando. And it's not enough to bring it down. We must now do everything possible to keep it down. This budget continues our investment in tools and training and technology necessary to keep Orlando safe. And that commitment also extends to the Orlando Fire Department. We spent the past 2 years fighting for federal grant money to keep our firefighters on the job. Those firefighters whose jobs were saved have made us proud, along with the entire department. They have maintained the department's ISO rating of 1, making them one of only 60 departments out of more than 50,000 nationally to achieve this designation. Now, what does that mean for our residents? A great example is our EMS response. OFD's code save rate is 34%, and that's compared to a national average of somewhere between 2 and 10%. So what that means is if an emergency like a heart attack happens in the city of Orlando, you have a much greater chance of surviving it because of the proven performance of the OFD. Now, the most pressing issue on most people's minds during this recession has been creating new jobs and keeping the ones that we have. While it's not the function of the city government to create jobs, we do have an important role to play in helping lay the foundation for the private sector to create jobs and opportunity. So our proposed budget continues to fund a diverse slate of business support programs and efforts to diversify our Central Florida economy. It includes programs like Main Street, our business assistance team. Sunrail's another terrific example of the commitment to jobs. Just days ago, we kicked off the construction of our first ever commuter rail system. Our city commitment to this project is less than 0.1% of our total budget. In return, we get a once-in-a-generation project that will give our residents much-needed, less expensive alternatives to their automobiles, while also generating more than 200,000 jobs over the next 25 years. And it's the same sort of investment we're making with projects such as the Medical City at Lake Nona, the Dr. Phillips Center for the Performing Arts, and the downtown Orlando's planned Creative Village. Commissioners, I hope that each of you is proud of the work that we have done together to overcome our budget challenges and continue to provide the superior services our residents depend on every day. I hope our residents are proud as well. I often say the best part of my job is simply getting to talk with the people that call our city home. what's going on in their lives, what's important to them, what concerns do they have. In the last few years, many of those conversations have focused on what steps Orlando's families are taking to tighten their belts, or what they're sacrificing today in order to provide for the future. I want our residents to know that their government has made the same tough spending decisions in these challenging times, and we've done so on their behalf. I want them to see where their money goes, why the spending is important to the city, and how it provides a benefit to them. And I want them to be proud that they live in a well-run, fiscally responsible city that is as careful with a dollar as they are. Commissioners, thank you again, and thank you to all the dedicated men and women who serve the residents of our city. Thank you as well for your commitment to Orlando. Now, Ray and Rebecca will deliver our budget presentation.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I just wanted to, before Ray comes up and does the detailed presentation for you this afternoon, I just wanted to take a moment and recognize our budget team for the city. I'd like for them to stand. We have them in the audience. Stand, stand, stand. Ray. Stand. These guys have done a tremendous job in doing the planning and all of the detailed work and reviewing various alternatives for managing through this recession, and I just wanted to give them a moment of recognition. Ray?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. It's my pleasure to walk through the second half of the budget presentation. Today primarily focused on the expenditure side, but also taking a minute in the very beginning to kind of talk about our financial position, where the city sits today. Then we'll do an expenditure overview, a budget status update, and then Rebecca will come back and close the presentation on key dates and activities to bring the budget to conclusion. Starting off talking about our budget position and our financial position in the city. As the Mayor mentioned in his budget address that we do have the lowest tax rate of any major city in Florida. Just looking at a comparative data, and what we have looked at is the 5 largest cities in Florida, those with populations over 200,000, and you can see clearly Orlando does have the lowest millage rate of those 5 jurisdictions. In particular, what we will look at as comparative numbers are Tampa and St. Pete. Those that are in our particular region, you can see that the city of Orlando's millage rate is lower than both of those jurisdictions. And put that into some kind of context, our millage rate is lower than it was 20 years ago. And with your approval today of a millage rate of 5.65 for fiscal year 2012, it's actually 23 years that our millage rate will be at its lowest. You can see from 90 to 2001, we had a millage rate of 6.066. It was lowered in 2002 to 5.69. And then at the height of the property tax value increase and property tax reform, we had 1 year of a millage rate of 4.93, and then for 4 fiscal years, we've had a millage rate of 5.65. A couple of gee-whiz numbers that if we had a millage rate today that we did in 1990, we would have an additional $7.3 million available to us in the current year budget. And had we kept that millage rate of 6.0666 throughout those years where we had lower millage rates, the city would have actually had $95 million more in revenue during that period than we did today. Another way of looking at it from the flip side is that that's $95 million that's been left in the taxpayer's pocket and not been remitted to the city. The third item that the Mayor mentioned is that the city has fought off tax increases as a solution to our budgetary issues, and other jurisdictions have raised their millage rate, particularly over the last 2 years at the height of the recession. Some statistical data to back that up. If we look at the 28 largest cities, which would be those with populations greater than 95,000, you can see between 2009 to 2010, 14 cities used millage rate increases to deal with the downturn in the not only the property tax values but also in the economy, and those are listed there. And then in 2011, there were another 8 cities that raised their millage rates as part of their budgetary process, and overall 13 of the 20th largest cities have higher millage rates today in 2011 than they did in 2009. Looking a little bit more closely at what's going on within Orange County, you can see that the statistics pretty much carry through there as well. In 2010, there were 5 municipalities in Orange County that raised their millage rates. And in 2011, 6 municipalities, including Oakland, Ocoee, and Winter Garden, raised their millage rates to deal with their budgetary situations. And overall, 6 municipalities of the 13 in Orange County have higher millage rates today than they did 2 years ago. And that's continuing. Recent news that we just pulled, 4 jurisdictions, City of Hollywood, Bel Air Bluffs, St. Lucie County, and Palm Beach County have all approved their preliminary millage rates that include increases between 2.7 to 23%. If we look at fact number 4, it's one thing to say that we've been able to hold our line on millage rate. The other, on the flip side, is we've also been able to maintain our savings account. Since 2005, we've increased our holdings, our fund balance by 30%, while other governments have drawn down on their fund balance. The next slide will look at the fiscal year comparative results for 2010. These are the audited financial results for the 5 major cities in Florida. You see in the second column their adopted budget. That number is what they had anticipated using as reserves in their 2010 budget. So as you can see, going through the budgetary process, Tampa, St. Pete, and Orlando had appropriated fund balance to use to balance their budget. The next column, the actual results, is how they ended that particular fiscal year. And you can see even though Miami and Hialeah had not budgeted their fund balance as they went through their budgetary process, they ended up with losses in fiscal year 2010 that resulted in drains on their reserves. Similarly, Tampa and St. Pete also ended the year in the red. They showed losses, and of the 5 jurisdictions, only the City of Orlando ended the year in the black of about $8 million. So if you look at the far right-hand column, this is the difference between what they had anticipated doing versus how they actually did. And you see Miami, St. Pete, and Hialeah all ended up drawing on their reserves for that fiscal year. And it's kind of a nuance in the way the schedule works. Even though Tampa ended up the year with a loss, it was less of a loss than they had anticipated, so they were in a better position. So less of a loss is better, to put that more succinctly. And then if you look at Orlando, we actually added to our reserves as a result of fiscal year 2010. So we added up, so rather than having a anticipated draw of 14.6, we ended up with a profit of $8 million. So our reserves ended up $22 million better than we had anticipated. The previous slide dealt specifically with the general fund, and in our reserve policy, what we use as a measure is both the general fund, UST fund, and our hurricane reserve fund. If we look at our reserves for fiscal year 2010 results, and these are just the general fund results, you can see that in fiscal year 2010, the beginning number, and then the second column is the fund balance that was appropriated to fund the budget that we're currently in, 2011. We do have 2 asterisks for Orlando and St. Petersburg. Both of those jurisdictions, including us, we actually delete or subtract what we anticipate using in the ensuing fiscal year from our reserve calculations, whereas Hialeah, Tampa, and Orange County do not. So if you were to pull their financial reports, there's no acknowledgement of what they're using for reserves in the ensuing fiscal year. So to make it apples-to-apples comparison, that's what we had to do in this column. So you can see what their unadjusted or their adjusted fund balance is as of 9/30/2010, and what their fiscal year 2010 expenditures and transfers out are to get a comparison of where they stand on their reserves on an equalized basis. And you can see Orlando, St. Pete, and Tampa are all within the same relative range of reserves on hand at the end of fiscal year 2010 in the 25 to 28% range. And you can see the situations that are facing Miami and Hialeah, and also the reserves for Orange County on a comparable basis. Comparing Orlando to Orange County, you can see that our reserves are twice that of what Orange County is, but our budget is half of what Orange County is. So it really puts us in a good light when you do a comparable comparison of our reserves versus Orange County. The next slide shows our total reserves, and this brings in the Hurricane Fund and also the UST Fund. And this is our historical perspective of where we stood comparison to our fund balance policy, our reserve policy. And you can see from 2005, we were about 21% at reserve status, up to 2011, where we're now at 31.7%. So we are over our reserve target by about 6.7%. And for comparative purposes, you can see where Orange County stood for each of those years. Our budget for fiscal year 2012 anticipates a reserve level of 25%. So in our proposed budget, we are maintaining our reserves at our policy maximum of 25%. Orange County is in their budget has a draw on reserves to bring them down to 13% for comparative purposes. Budget fact number 5, how we spend our money. If we look at the police officers per 1,000 residents, comparison with our 5 largest jurisdictions in Florida, you can see that Orlando has over 3 police officers per 1,000 residents. Miami is close, and then you can see where the other jurisdictions fall significantly lower than where we are in Orlando. Looking at the same numbers for firefighters per 1,000 residents, you can see that Orlando is the only jurisdiction, the 5 major jurisdictions in Florida, that has over 2 firefighters per 1,000 residents, and then each of the jurisdictions are significantly below that number. Comparatively, if we look at what has happened in the city of Orlando as far as our non-sworn employees, so these are non-sworn police officers, non-sworn firefighters, you can see that starting in 2001, we had about 11.8 employees per 1,000 residents. Our numbers for 2012 are about 7 employees per 1,000 residents. So there's been a significant reduction in the number of city employees per 1,000 residents over that time period. Wouldn't be a budget presentation if I didn't give you a complicated slide that takes a little bit of time to explain, and this is the one, so I'll give you the heads up. Over that period, that same time period, population has increased. So if we did nothing with our employee count, the employees per 1,000 is going to go down. So what we've attempted to do with the red line is to show, with a benchmark year of 2005, what has happened as a result of just natural increases in residents in the city of Orlando. So had we done nothing, if we would have kept the position count we had in 2005 to today, our count would be 8.2 employees per 1,000 residents. But because we have declined in the number of actual city employees that we have, that's why we're at 7.38. So what this is showing is that there has been not only economies that we've had to find within the city government because of the increasing number of residents we have in the city, we've also had to delete services and reduce services in order to maintain the balanced budget that we have today. Number 6, budget fact number 6 is that we have fully funded our commitment to retirement benefits. Just for some reference, as of January 31st, we had about $825 million worth of pension assets that we're currently managing. We do conduct actuary studies on an annual basis. They tell us what our annual required contributions are for our pension plans. We have funded our annual required contributions, and we have also built that into our proposed budget for 2012 to continue that commitment. We conduct experience studies every 5 years to make sure that the assumptions that are used for actuarial studies are accurate. And then most importantly, when we look at our pension plans, the number that we look at is our funded status. And what we're looking at is how many assets we have versus what our commitments are in our pension plan to come up with what we call the funded status. As of 9/30/2010, you'll see the funded status for general employees at 79%, police and fire are both over 80%. And actuaries consider a plan that's funded over 80% to be well funded. So both our police and our fire plans are well funded. Just a note on our general employees plan, and we've talked about this before, is because that is a closed plan, our requirements to fund that are going to come upon us much quickly, so that's going to tend to have that funded ratio slightly lower than where we are in police and fire. And then in the insert, you can see where some of the other cities compare as far as their funded status, anywhere from the low 40s to the roughly the 90%. So we are clearly in that upper echelon of being able to fund our pension plans. The other topic are other post-employment benefits, specifically our retiree health care. And as you recall back 3 years ago, we made the change. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board, their standards changed, and we have to treat our retiree health insurance as if it were a pension plan. So we have to make annual contributions into our OPEB trust fund to make sure that we have funding in place, and when our employees retire, their health benefit is fully funded. In that discussion, they come up with an annual required contribution similar to our pension plan. Made up of 2 components, really. One component is our cost to provide health care to our current retirees, and then we also have to make up for the fact that we've got a liability associated with employees earning retiree health care plus what employees have already earned. So we have to start making contributions in that trust fund to catch up and make sure we have those assets available for when employees retire. On the next slide, it shows how we stand in funding our OPEB compared to the other 5 jurisdictions. In that first block, you can see in that first column is what their annual required contributions are. So Hialeah had $18 million. We were required to put in 20. Down to Tampa at $5 million. And that second column within that block shows you what they actually put into their OPEB contribution. So you can see of the 5 jurisdictions, the 5 largest jurisdictions in Florida, Orlando was the only one who fully funded its OPEB contribution for fiscal year 2010. I will go a step further. Orlando is one of the very few jurisdictions in the country that fully funded its OPEB contribution in 2010. The result of that is what's happening in the right-hand column, and what we are required to do is that if we are fully funding our OPEB contribution, it is a positive to us. We show that as plan assets available to pay retiree health care. And you can see as of September 30th, 2010, we had $33 million worth of assets in our OPEB plan. Those jurisdictions that don't make their required contributions have to show a liability, and you can see on the right-hand column what the liability is associated with each of those other 4 jurisdictions because they're unable to make their OPEB contribution. It's a huge recognition for the City of Orlando to be able to fund their OPEB obligation. It's not very easily understood by the general population, but from a financial ratings analysis standpoint and from the overall financial condition of the city, it's a wonderful thing that we're in a position where we have funded our OPEB contribution. Budget fact number 7, and we put this under the category of the independent analysis of the city related to everyone else. We do have a underlying AAA bond rating from Fitch, and we'll show that on the next slide. This is a summary from our fiscal year 2010 bond disclosure supplement. And you can see for our general obligations, the implied rate, if we were to go out and do a general obligation bond, right now Fitch has us rated at AAA. And you can see for each of the different components of the city's bond program where they're currently rated by each of the 3 rating agencies. Selected comments that we receive from our rating agencies point to several themes. First is our strong financial management, led by our City Council in setting policies and procedures that the city follows for developing our budget, doing our financial accounting. The other thing that they recognize is also our strong reserve status, and that's always been important. And then Fitch in particular is recognizing making our annual required contribution for our OPEB as well as for our pension plan. For Moody's, similar comments: strong fund balance, strong cash positions, and a structurally balanced budget is also very important. S&P. Reserve levels, calculations of our reserves, where we stand, financial performance, and our financial practices, how we develop our budget, how we report out our information. And then finally, budget fact number 8 and that deals specifically with how we spend our money, and that's our investment in our police and fire departments. The next slide is a comparison between 2005 and 2012 of our public safety costs versus the taxes that are raised in the City of Orlando. So the top block, what we have done is we've taken our police budget and our fire department and netted out any fees that they generate, false alarm fees, report fees, application fees, and all those things, to get to a general fund number of what it's costing us to operate the police and fire departments, as well as the cost of the public safety initiative, the public safety debt service. And you can see between 2005 and 2012, the amount of money that's allocated to police and fire to public safety has increased 42%. The bottom block compares our ad valorem revenues, our business taxes, franchise fees, municipal service, sales tax, and that revenue has grown by 16.2% from 2005 to 2012. So our public safety costs and our budgetary allocations to public safety have grown by over twice our tax revenue. And what has happened because of that, you'll see in the bottom line that in 2005, we actually had $30 million worth of tax revenue that was greater than our public service costs, public safety costs. In 2012, we flipped that, and now every dollar that we raise in the City of Orlando for taxes can be directly attributed to public safety costs. So public safety, and actually to a deficit of $1.7 million, is fully funded. So if we were to take every tax dollar that was raised in the city and pay for public safety, we would be $1.6 million short of being able to afford the budget that's proposed for 2012. And with that, we'll transition into the expenditure overview for 2012. This was a slide we showed at the last workshop that showed that our proposed budget for fiscal year 2012 was $347 million, a net decline of $9 million. Specifically looking at why that's happening, If you look at our total budget reduction within our operating departments of $4 million, there's two things that are going on that we'll explain in more detail. First is the risk management premium and also the health insurance reduction funding for fiscal year 2012. As far as our risk management rebate, as was discussed at the last workshop, since 2005, we've actually brought back a rebate from our risk management fund. And starting in fiscal year 2012, we're going to change that and reduce our premiums that we're paying in. So rather than paying in extra and then taking it back as a rebate, we're just going to reduce our contribution from this point going forward. So starting in 2012, we will have a reduction in the operating budget by about $3 million, which equates to the rebate of previous years. On the right-hand side, we like to also point out the status of our risk management fund. It's an internal service fund, self-supporting. As of September 30th, 2010, we had excess available cash in our risk management fund of $12 million. And to put that in perspective, in our accounting for our risk management fund, we take into account not only what our claims are, what we anticipate our claims to be, but also we have an actuarial study that tells us what to anticipate in claims as a result of things that have already happened in the city. And above and beyond that, we have $12 million worth of cash sitting in the risk management fund, above and beyond anything that we could anticipate at the present time as far as claims that that fund would have to pay out. As a result of that, what we're proposing to do in the 2012 budget is to take about $6 million of that and move it over into our health insurance fund. And if you recall, several months ago, we approved the transition from a fully insured health insurance plan to a self-funded plan. So starting on January 1st of 2012, we will move from buying health insurance to where the city is actually assuming the liability and assuming the full funding of our health insurance claims. And that's the next thing that we've done in the proposed 2012 budget. Starting on January 1st, as I mentioned, we are going to a fully self-insured plan. We have built in a rate increase in our budget of 4.5%, and what we're going to do is transfer reserves that are currently in our risk management fund to our health insurance fund to establish reserves in that fund. $4.5 million will come from the general fund, and then the corresponding percentages from each of our operating funds. As a result of that transfer, we've reduced our health insurance contributions for 2012 by that $4.5 million, essentially pre-funding our health insurance plan. Moving from a fully insured plan to a self-insured plan requires us to have reserves set aside for future claims after the end of the year. And what we're actually doing by doing this transfer is pre-funding our reserves in that fund by making that transfer, which allows us to do a reduction in our operating budget of $4.5 million. Summary of our pension contributions for 2012. Our contributions for pensions of $39.9 million in 2012 is about a $3 million increase, and you can see by plan how much that increase is. We have also fully funded in the 2012 proposed budget our OPEB contribution of $15.6 million. Across all funds, our pension contributions are $47 million, and our OPEB contribution is $21.8 million. Both of those fully fund our annual required contributions for our pension and OPEB fund. Looking at our capital improvement contribution for 2012, starting in 2011, we reduced that contribution by half. It was a 2-year plan to reduce our capital contribution to get through the downturn. So in 2012, we do have a contribution of $4.7 million program for capital improvements. You can see the allocation on that slide. It's similar to our 2011 allocation. Specifically, some of the projects we'll be undertaking is our fire equipment replacement program. In 2011, we had a similar $1 million allocation, which allowed us to do a regularized replacement of fire department equipment like bunker gear and life packs and air packs. 2012, we will continue that program, also the purchase of extrication equipment and hose replacement program. Our sidewalk program is funded at $700,000. You see 3 items that were purchased in 2011 through that allocation, and our 2012 allocation is split between hazardous sidewalk repair of $300,000 and school safety sidewalk program of $400,000. Pavement rehabilitation, we have $1 million allocated for that as well. 3 items we've highlighted that we've been able to accomplish so far in 2011. And in 2012, we also want to note that in addition to the $1 million general fund allocation, there's also a $600,000 allocation from gas tax. So our total commitment for pavement rehabilitation in 2012 is $1.6 million. We also allocate $1.5 million for technology enhancements. And you can see a list of the projects we accomplished in 2011, continuing with securing data in 2012, also looking at business optimization, automating. I'll get that word out. Looking as we go forward, looking at those initiatives that we are able to do things more efficiently and more effectively within the city. The one item that is new in our 2012 budget is the channel migration project. Recall back to 1994, we purchased a 22-channel 800 megahertz system. In '96, we converted 10 of those channels to the new 800 megahertz. So there's 12 analog channels currently that the city is operating, and we have been told by our vendor that the system life will come to a halt in 2012 when their maintenance ends. So what we have done is we've allocated $1 million in the budget for next year to initiate the migration for those remaining 12 channels to move them from analog to digital. Right now that's allocated as a debt or a lease, depending on which would be the most appropriate, because we're looking at about a $6 million project to accomplish that. By doing it this way, what we are doing is we're going to incorporate that $1 million into our budget essentially in perpetuity, recognizing that our digital channels and our radio systems are something that's crucial to the operation of the city, and it builds into that contribution every year so that we have money set aside to do whatever is necessary to keep that system fully functional. Under the fleet replacement, as you recall back to 2010 and developing the 2011 budget, we also reduced our replacement vehicle funding by about half. We do pre-fund our vehicle replacements, so departments are contributing on a monthly basis towards their future replacement of vehicles. And then one of the reasons why we do that is that we can't absorb budgetary shocks in the system. So if we have a high-dollar piece of equipment like a fire department tower that comes up for replacement, it's more difficult for us to find that money in the current year budget than it is if we plan ahead for that purpose and have set aside funding for that particular purpose. And that's why we do the fleet replacement program the way we do. To give you some numbers of where we stand 1 year into the reductions in our replacement program, looking at police vehicles, we have a current useful life of about 7 years for a police car. In the far right-hand side, you can see as of July last year, we're at 3.8 for an average age of our vehicle. As of July 1st of this year, about 3.9. So we lost about a month in the average age of our vehicle, which is nothing significant. One thing I'll point on this slide that's important to us as managers of the fleet, as you see in 2005 there was a large vehicle purchase, and that's when the city moved to the take-home vehicle policy. So in order to move to that, we had a large purchase of vehicles in 2005. To avoid that spike in 2012, what we've done is in 2008 through 2011 is to level that off. Again, we can't absorb budgetary shocks. It's easier for us to do things on a regular replacement cycle. You can see that we've gotten towards a more regularized replacement of our police vehicles. For fire engines, our current useful life as a frontline piece of equipment is 12 years, and then those vehicles are held in reserve for 3 years. As of July 1st of 2010, our average age of our fleet was 6.3. As of July 1st of this year, we're at 6.6, so we have lost about a month or two on our average life of a vehicle, but nothing significant that would give us any concern that we are falling behind in our vehicle replacement. Our towers have a useful life, frontline use of 15 years, and you can see between 2010 and 2011 we've gained about a year. The difficulties is there's so few of these that any kind of one-year aging is going to have a significant impact, but still within the range of where we would want to be as far as our life of our vehicles. Looking at rescues, our frontline use of a rescue has about 6 years. And you can see we've actually gone from 4.5 average age to 3.5, primarily because of the new initiative taking over transport. What's critically important to note is that in our funding for EMS transport, we still are fully funding our rescue replacements. So they're not on a half year like everyone else. We are fully funding that, recognizing that that is a critical service that the city is employing, and that's not something that we can reduce. Then take a step outside the general fund to look at our collection vehicles, and they have an average life of about 7 years as a frontline piece of equipment. We're averaging between 4 and 5 years as a useful life. The difficulty in doing that calculation with our collection vehicles is that that's primarily driven by routes, and when we bring new routes on, we bring on new equipment, so we're not going to be as regular in our replacement of collection vehicles because of how the city has grown in the past. This is probably the most important slide as far as where we are in our fleet and also in how the city is managing our money. There are only 2 of the 5 major jurisdictions in the state of Florida that actually pre-fund their vehicle replacements, and you can see that's us in St. Petersburg. Orange County does not as well. So because we have pre-funded our vehicles, we have what we call unrestricted net assets in our fleet replacement fund. That's essentially funds that are available in our fleet replacement program to do vehicle replacements as they come due. So even though for last year and for next year we're only doing half, we still have a very nice sum of money set aside in the vehicle replacement program to do our vehicle replacements. As I promised to you last year when we talked about this and continues in today, we are not sacrificing public safety because of the half-year funding of vehicle replacements. When a public safety vehicle needs to be replaced, it is going to be replaced, and this is one of the reasons why we're able to make that commitment to you. On the flip side, in the far right-hand column, if we look at maintenance reserves, this is not the vehicle replacement fund. This is the reserves that we have in our operating side for our fleet. We are at 20%, essentially 20% fund balance in our fleet fund. By comparison, Orange County is at 8%. This allows us to absorb shocks in the system like gas price increases or any kind of maintenance repairs that need to be done. We are funded in our fleet replacement fund to be able to handle those. So where do we stand? The general fund revenue presented to you at the last work session, 3347.2. Our current proposed budget is 347.2, which leads us to where we are today, where we have a balanced budget for fiscal year 2012 with a millage rate of 5.65. Our total budget's $923.3 million. That's about a $9 million decrease from last year. Note on this particular slide, this is a summary slide of all the various funds that the city operates. If you look on page 4 through 5 of our budget and brief, we list all those particular funds. Special revenue funds, you see a significant decline. That's because we appropriate grants as they become awarded as opposed to anticipated. So in 2011, we had more grants that we're recognizing than in 2012. That's the reason for that decline. And then the big number on internal service fund is recognition that we are fully funding self-insured health insurance fund, which requires us to do a higher appropriation in that fund. 900 positions in our other funds. There are no new positions requested for the general fund or our other funds. There are 2 positions that are vacant in the parking fund that will be deleted. Funds are balanced, and there are no new fee increases or rate increases, but just the automatic increases that we have in place for solid waste and wastewater are, according to the rate studies, are budgeted for next year. Just a real brief highlight on our grants funds. The COPS grant is funding 15 positions. That grant will end in the June of 2012, and the police department will be making an application to extend the date of that grant based on the delay in the starting date. So we would anticipate that the 15 police officers were transferred to the general fund in 2013, which would be not next year's but the year after budget. SAFER grant, there's 46 firefighter positions. That grant is funded through April of 2012, and those positions would transfer to the EMS Transport Fund in May of 2012. And then I'll let Rebecca bring it to the close with our key dates.
Later on today, Commissioners, we will be delivering to your offices a notebook with the detailed budget. If you have questions or desire more detailed discussions, please let my office know, and we'll be happy to sit down with you and answer any questions or provide you with any additional information that you need in your decision making. Today, as our slide shows, we had our address and our expenditure overview. And today, later on in our City Council meeting, we will adopt the proposed millage rate for fiscal year 2012 of $5.65 per $1,000 evaluation. And then on September 12th, we'll have a public hearing on the proposed budget. As you may recall, this has to happen after 5 o'clock in the evening. This meeting will be held right after 5, as well as September 19th. We will have an additional public hearing right after 5 o'clock in the evening, and during that meeting we will adopt the proposed budget and finalize the adoption of the millage rate. With that, sir, we'll entertain any questions.
Mr. Lynham.
Beck, I just have a comment. There's always talk about consolidation of county and city services, and I noticed that Miami, that has a consolidated form of government, actually has the highest tax rate and the greatest draw on reserves. So maybe that consolidation aspect isn't as great as we have been led to believe by some folks that just aren't doing the research. So great job. Just wanted to congratulate you on a wonderful presentation and for putting the dollars and cents down so that we can make good decisions. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Lynham.
Just a couple of questions regarding the last statement that Ray made regarding the 2012 EMS Transport Fund. Where are the dollars coming from when those 46 firefighter positions end and transferred to transport? Are these the new funds from our transport services? Are these our profits? Will all 46 positions go there, or will there be some attrition?
Right now, the plan would be to move all 46 to the EMS Transport Fund. We are in that stage where we're evaluating the revenue that's being generated from the transport fee. That is a segregated fund, so those EMS transport fees are segregated. We believe, and we're confident, we'll have revenue in 2012 to continue those 46 positions through the entire fiscal year. There's other analysis that we'll be doing and bringing to City Council as a result of our transport program that we have in place. But right now, the funds are available in the EMS transport to continue those 46 positions through 2012.
So they're basically being kept pure to be able to fund these positions?
Yes.
Do you expect any attrition, or are we just going to have 46 positions no matter what?
The 46 positions are fully funded. What happens as far as making sure that those positions are filled is something else, but as required to do the transport function, would be anticipated those 46 positions would be filled for the entire fiscal year.
One more regarding OPD, and I forgot to ask the chief when he gave his report last time. At OPD, are we at full capacity for staff? We said we had 3.12 officers per 1,000 population. Is that when it's full capacity, or is that current capacity?
Hello, Mayor, Commissioners. I think I understand the question, Commissioner. We do have some vacancies right now as we speak, probably about 30 funded positions. Okay.
So we're not really at capacity, but we have the funds to fund those positions is what we're saying.
Absolutely. They're funded positions. We've experienced in the past year a lot of officers that have retired unexpectedly, and we're just trying to fill those funded vacant positions as we speak.
Chief, then do we still have an academy?
Yes, we do.
That these guys are going through?
Yes, officers in the academy, and we're also hiring certified officers, Commissioner, from other agencies that have applied with the Orlando Police Department.
Okay, super. So we have 30 position vacancies? Okay.
Approximately.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know which one of you guys. Okay, Commissioner Ortiz.
Thank you, Commissioner Stewart. Very nice of you. First of all, I want to thank Rebecca and Ray for your diligence and responsible assessment, and as always, conservative projections. I think that's what made our city stand out worldwide, and that's why we continue moving forward. And it's exciting to not to have raise taxes or have to lay off anyone. So thank you so much for the leadership of the mayor and the commissioners. I think it's great times to be part of this team here. So, but I do have a question. It has to do with the rescues and with the police also. And in reference to the rescues, are we generating or are we going to generate enough revenues to replace and get more rescues with what we're doing with the program we have now?
As far as the rescues in particular, those are fully budgeted within the EMS Transport Fund on a full replacement cost value, because we recognize that that's not something we extend the useful life or take the risk that those vehicles are going to be down. So we are contributing on a monthly basis to the replacement fund the full 1 month allocation for our rescue, so that we do have those funds available to replace those vehicles if they need to be replaced. I also highlight the slide that showed what our reserves were in our fleet fund, so we do have funds available to make sure that we are up to date and have those vehicles on the street operating.
So I guess my question is more specific. With the service we're providing, we're generating enough to go ahead and cover for the actual.
At the current time, the answer to that is yes.
Okay.
Yes, and we would anticipate that for 2012.
I was just going to add as well, Commissioner, remember when we brought that forward, we said that we'd come back and we do, one, keep the commissioners apprised of where we are processed, and Chief Miller did a quick update a couple of months ago, and we are carefully monitoring that, and we will continue to provide updates on where we are with respect to our transport, our collection rates. But operationally, everything is going exceedingly well thus far.
Well, I'm accentuating this because I know it's a great program, and once again, I want to congratulate the chief. I don't see him here, but it is something that I know is working great for the city. I guess the next question, it has to do with what Commissioner Lynham asked with the police department. The ratings, it says a police officer per 1,000 citizens. Is that something that we have as of now? Is that something that we would attain once we replace these positions, or once we fill these positions that we have empty, that are funded but are not quite fulfilled yet?
The graph that we showed you are funded positions. So
we are at that now.
Well, we will be at that once the 30 positions are filled.
Okay.
And that's an ongoing process.
Okay,
Obviously, when we have an authorized funded strength, we'll sometimes go below that when we have unexpected vacancies occur that we are not ready to rehire.
Well, thank you. Great job. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Stewart?
Thank you. Let me also echo the same comments. Thank you for your work and for what you have accomplished. A couple of quick questions. So, Ray, let me kind of ask you this, because I'm just perplexed by how other cities run. So on page 26, are you trying to tell me that if something were to happen to Miami, that they'd have to go and find $84 million to fund their OPEB obligations?
Actually, what's happening is they're accumulating a liability, and that's the magnitude of their liability today of what they should have been paying in to amortize that liability. So the answer is, if Miami were to shut down today, they would have nothing to pay their retirees for health insurance going into the future, whereas we have already set aside $33 million to do that. And I'll amend that with also, we saw a lot of that. We're actually about 20 years behind the private sector. This same pronouncement, the same accounting for health insurance happened on the private sector in 1991. And that's why you'll see a lot of the issues in private sector pensions, private sector commitments, why they're falling on the wayside, because they never set that money aside for that particular purpose.
And let me follow along with what Commissioner Sheehan had said. One of the things I noticed on here is I didn't see Jacksonville, Duval County on here.
The difficulty with Jacksonville,
tell me a little bit why they aren't on here.
It's a little bit difficult for us to compare as far as financials because they are a combined city-county. It's a little bit more difficult with them because of that. You know, some of the things are comparable, like a pension plan status, things like that. But as far as financials, it's a little bit complicated, and we didn't want to confuse this presentation any more than it was already with having to do that additional explanation.
I'm interested in terms of the combined millage rate as an example. I know that the obligations are probably a little bit different. And I guess I'm trying to understand from your accounting perspective the difference between Jacksonville, Duval, and Miami-Dade.
I can help you there. Jacksonville is a consolidated government that has taken over the city-county responsibilities both. Miami-Dade's a little bit different because, and actually, Commissioner Sheehan, that was in reference to the city of Miami. The city of Miami is not actually, and our Hialeah for that matter, consolidated into their consolidated county government. Right. So that's the difference.
Yeah, we wanted to just have cities only because when you do that, then you start looking at budgets. It's not just the millage rate, but the budget includes things in their general fund that we don't have. Yeah. It just makes the comparison very difficult. So.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I'm interested in the millage rate, but I'll go back, and that would be more appropriately in Jacksonville compared to Orange County, more than would be appropriately compared to us. Okay, good. Other question I think you already answered. Thank you very much. Thank you for your work.
Okay, good work, team. It's much easier this year than some of the decisions we've had to make in the past. And I'll tell you, council members, there are some cities, especially in South Florida, that are falling on very, very difficult economic times. City of Miami is one, and then I know that I read these headlines in the paper every day, and there are cities that are facing huge deficits and are going to have to take either steps to cut into their public safety budgets or raise taxes, and I appreciate your hard work and what we've been able to do here over the last couple of years to get us in this position. Thank you. All right, that will conclude our budget workshop. Let's go ahead and do agenda review quickly, and then we'll take a short break before we start the council meeting.